The Great Mystery by the Hollow Movement. In the beginning, the heartbeat of the universe created waves that rippled throughout the cosmos. The Great Mystery had a vision and showed us the stars and earth, its creatures and beauty, the beginnings, growth, and endings of things. The first world of the eastern rising sun was made of all the elements, each receiving its own power and spirit, swirling about the unformed cosmos. The second world emerged from the north, where life-giving habitats began to form: sun, moon, stars, rivers, forest, oceans, each with their own life-giving beauty. The third world hailed from the west, filled with all the animals, the flyers, walkers, crawlers, and swimmers, each a unique spirit and role in the emerging flow of life. The fourth world of the south was the last, and the form we take now was born. We are the youngest of creation. We are the ones who rely on the previous three worlds, the more than humans, for our lives. We invite our ancestors of the three worlds into our decisions and into our hearts. When we have chosen well, we benefit all worlds, and the spirit of the new earth lives through us. Throughout history, humanity has sought to understand the ultimate order of the universe. Ancient civilizations from Egypt to China recognized the cosmic or divine order as the source of justice, morality, and harmony. Principles like Mat, Ruta, and Tao shaped civilizations and their laws. Across continents, civilizations sought cosmic harmony and justice. Ancient civilizations recognized the natural order from observing nature. Later on, Greek and Roman thinkers explored these universal truths. The idea of natural law was born, a belief that there are objective principles discoverable by reason, guiding life and society across time and place. In the modern era, scientific discoveries like quantum randomness, complexity, and emergence challenge our traditional notions of order. Natural law is often seen as flexible and adaptable, shaped by human consensus and evolving with our knowledge. Yet, some scientists and philosophers warn that this flexibility can become dangerous. They argue that real boundaries and limits exist within nature. Overstepping these, for example through technology or abstraction, can lead to chaos and ecological collapse. When our reasoning becomes clouded, confusion and conflicts take root, violence follows, and we forget the real boundaries nature has set. Overstepping these limits by action or by neglect leads not only to chaos in our societies, but collapse in the world around us. Modern ecology calls for more biosphere-centric natural law, which may also be understood as a form of implicit natural law. Building on the insights of pioneers like Vladimir Vernadsky and further developed through James Lovelock's Gaia hypothesis, this perspective views Earth as a living, interconnected system. Thus, true justice and governance require us to recognize nature's patterns and boundaries, not just as limits, but as the very grammar of survival. In this view, law must respect and work within the boundaries set by the biosphere itself. Transgressing these boundaries, whether intentionally or unintentionally, results in imbalance, collapse, or even extinction. To build truly resilient and autonomous communities, our laws and ethics must honor the living boundaries set by the biosphere. When we respect our natural limits, we lay the foundation for justice that endures, for nature, and for generations to come. Ervin Lázaro underscores the importance of natural limits. Observing, nature operates according to limits, cycles, and interdependent systems. The attempt to override these cycles with human abstraction often leads to disorder and ecological breakdown. Science and the Akashic Field, 2004. Rupert Sheldrake echoes this warning in his critique of materialist science and abstraction. When human abstractions overstep the inherent boundaries set by nature, chaos is the inevitable result. Natural law is not just a philosophical abstraction, it is the strict rulebook of life. The science delusion from a biological perspective, Bruce H. Lipton stresses the necessity of harmony with natural conditions. Our bodies and cells respond to their environment in ways that reveal nature's intelligence and boundaries. When external influences push past these limits, the harmonious balance is lost. The Biology of Belief, 2005. In Theoretical Physics and the Study of Universal Order, S. James Gates, Jr. notes, the universe is not as random as it appears. Deep structures of order embedded in information and code set strict boundaries. Ignoring these laws leads to unpredictable results. Physics World, 2011. David Bohm, renowned for his work on holistic order, concludes, we must understand the implicate order that governs all things, abstraction and fragmentation of the roots of disorder, both ecological and psychological. Wholeness in the Implicate Order, 1980. As we reflect on these insights from modern science and ancient wisdom, one theme stands clear: humanity must align with natural law, not against it. For most of history, people understood this intuitively. Rivers, forests, and seasons set boundaries everyone recognized. Nature's order shaped how we lived. But something shifted. Over time, especially through thinkers like Aristotle and Aquinas, we began grounding our laws in human reason rather than observable reality. Law stopped reflecting nature and started reflecting power. Personage became the vessel that allowed a few people to play God on earth, crafting rules, not from the wisdom of the living world, but from personal interpretations and opinions. When law is built on opinion rather than the natural order, it becomes easier to ignore boundaries. Today, we see the result of this separation in how rules are made and enforced. A handful of persons set policy for millions. David Graeber was an American anthropologist and public intellectual known for linking anthropology to big questions about economy, power, and morality. He taught at Goldsmiths, University of London, and wrote widely read books. In his book Debt, Graeber writes, legally, our notion of the corporation is very much a product of the European High Middle Ages. The legal idea of a corporation as a fictive person, persona ficta, a person who, as Maitland, the great British legal historian, put it, is immortal, who sues and is sued, who holds lands, has a seal of his own, who makes regulations for those natural persons of whom he is composed, was first established in canon law by Pope Innocent IV in 1250 AD, and one of the first kinds of entities it applied to were monasteries, as also to universities, churches, municipalities, and guilds. The concept of legal personhood emerged in Roman law, where the term persona originally referred to the mask worn by actors, a symbolic role by legal analogy. Roman jurists like Ulpian established a distinction that would echo through centuries: natural persons, actual living humans, and juridical persons, legal fictions created by law itself. For millennia, this distinction remained theoretical, but in the Middle Ages, as collective institutions like monasteries, universities, and guilds needed to own property and enter contracts, legal scholars faced a crucial question: how could an imaginary entity possess rights? Pope Innocent IV provided the answer: legal persons are fictions deliberately created by law. The brilliant medieval jurist Bartolus de Saxaferrata refined this doctrine, coining the term persona ficta, legal fiction of personality. This wasn't merely philosophical, it was practical power. A legal fiction, once recognized by authority, could be granted, managed, regulated, and revoked entirely by the state centuries later. As colonial empires and modern nation-states consolidated power, this fiction became the mechanism by which every individual was assigned a legal identity, a status defined, issued, and controlled entirely by the state. The irony is profound. What began as a tool to enable collective action became an instrument of individual subordination. As the legal system evolves, it seems inevitable that legal personhood, once reserved for humans, will be extended to animals, artificial intelligence, and even parts of nature, rivers, trees, oceans, clouds, and more, as we discover their intelligence and value within the biosphere. We are entering an era when all objective things may be absorbed into the system, given rights and responsibilities, much like people. This process of turning reality into legal fiction and commodities has been happening for centuries and now accelerates as we move into the digital age, with tools like blockchain making ownership and management even more abstract and concentrated. Some institutions are already creating formal roles to manage the world in this way. The risk is that, as law continues to fictionalize and commodify more and more of life, treating rivers and forests as property to be administered by appointed guardians, we become increasingly separated from natural law, the living principles and forces that have allowed life to endure catastrophe, overcome extinction, and flourish. By recognizing the biosphere's limits and by acknowledging life's implicate order as real forms of natural law, we can redefine and restore the role of law to support harmony between humans and all life. This return to objectivity is essential for the future of the biosphere and for us all. Throughout history, people have sought ways to gain true autonomy, to claim ownership over their own legal identity. The sovereign movement is one such attempt, where individuals try to reclaim their personage, believing it can be held as personal property, apart from state control. The idea is simple. If personage is the legal mask granted by the state, perhaps we can take it back, own it ourselves, and become sovereign individuals, free from national laws and citizenship obligations. However, the reality is more complicated. Personage is not a personal asset, it's a legal instrument, a status that is defined, issued, and managed entirely by the state. The process and authority for resigning citizenship or relinquishing legal identity remain firmly under government control. So no matter how passionately one claims sovereignty or tries to file legal paperwork, the instrument itself and its power never truly leads the hands of the state. As a result, the sovereign movement's efforts to resign citizenship or gain absolute freedom by reclaiming personage is doomed to disappointment. The state continues to hold jurisdiction, and these legal attempts are rarely recognized outside the system itself. In 2007, UNESCO adopted a policy in alignment with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDIP, reinforcing the movement toward indigenous autonomy. This global milestone inspired renewed interest in the sovereign movement, with many individuals viewing it as a pathway to personal independence from the state. However, while the sovereign movement asserts that one can simply reclaim or resign personage, legal identity, through individual action within state boundaries, this interpretation misapplies the context and intent of UNDIP. UNDIP and UNESCO policy emphasize that indigenous recognition is achieved through self-identification and acceptance by the community, not by unilateral declaration or legal paperwork. Genuine autonomy means living within the social, legal, and cultural boundaries of an indigenous community, embracing collective responsibility and implicit natural law, rather than relying on state-issued personage or agency. It is not as simple as claiming indigenous status. True recognition and independence require authentic participation, mutual acceptance, and the willingness to live by the community's rules and nature's laws, not merely individual will. UNDRIP is a historical event in the history of the recognition in humans' rights, based on an aspect of implicit natural law, which has been overlooked in modern civilization. For the first time in modern man has there been such a rip in the fabric of the Western legal system, which grants the respect to one choosing to live outside the legal state of personage. A new era is taking shape as more people search for community that feels real, guided by nature's rhythms and protected from imposed control. Across the world, indigenous nations are renewing their societies by drawing on ancestral governance and living knowledge. In Canada, the Assembly of First Nations represents hundreds of First Nations, advancing priorities in education, language revitalization, and health. Since UNDIP, many are translating laws into their own languages and setting up digital platforms that engage youth in cultural revival and economic development. In New Zealand, the Ngāti Hui, we have reclaimed stewardship of rivers and parks, blending traditional Maori environmental practices with modern conservation science. The Navajo Nation in the United States stands out for its sovereignty, operating tribal courts, police, and schools while launching solar farms and partnerships with universities. The Navajo Human Rights Commission has used UNDEEP to press for justice and dignity for the community. Across the Arctic, Inuit Tupiri Kenot Army leverages technology to revitalize language and map land use. Their bilingual education initiatives and environmental monitoring show how tradition and innovation can coexist. In Scandinavia, the Sami Parliament brings together indigenous Sami from Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Digital services and support for reindeer husbandry help preserve ways of life once threatened by central government policies. And in Colombia, the Consejo Regional Indígena del Cauca, or CRIC, empowers dozens of indigenous groups through hybrid governance, using digital mapping to defend land and leading community patrols to protect biodiversity and culture. In each of these communities, the lessons are clear. Resilience grows from strong social bonds, respect for nature, and the adaptation of ancient wisdom to modern challenges. UNDEEP isn't just a declaration, it's a living ethic, enabling humans to shape their own futures and help humanity rediscover the law of nature itself. Not all communities will reach full self-sustainability or autonomy. Even with strong intentions, some will struggle to build durable practices of ethical communication, especially when relationships are shaped more by coercion than by natural law. So the deeper question becomes practical. Why do some communities recover and reorganize under stress while others fracture or disappear? Early researchers often assumed the answer lived mainly in ceremony, rituals, myths, and traditional knowledge, and they weren't wrong to take those seriously. Anthropologists like Franz Boas and Bronislaw Malinowski documented traditions such as Hopi rain ceremonies and Pacific Island navigation, and it became clear that many of these practices preserve ecological memory, ways of transmitting survival knowledge across generations. Aboriginal Australian cultural burning is a clear example, repeatedly validated by modern fire science for sustaining ecosystems and reducing catastrophic fire risk. But as the research matured, especially through late 20th century ecology and complexity theory, another pattern emerged. Thinkers like Elinor Ostrom and C.S. Holling showed that the strongest communities don't just inherit good techniques, they maintain governance structures that can learn. They organize resource use collectively, respond to feedback quickly, and enforce limits in ways people experience as legitimate. In that light, the deeper source of resilience is often not any single ritual or technology, but the social architecture surrounding them. Many indigenous systems include leadership and roles, sometimes even clear hierarchy. But it is hierarchy based on service rather than authority. Leaders are expected to remain humble because their power is conditional. It depends on trust, accountability, and the community's ongoing participation. Decision-making is not designed to concentrate control. It is designed to keep relationships intact, keep information moving, and keep correction possible. The community's feedback functions as a stabilizing force, so responsibility can rise without domination taking hold. Similar group-oriented methods are seen in the methodologies of Edward Deming for quality management or team-building systems, such as sociocracy. In corporate settings, such approaches have enhanced teamwork and decision-making, but the primary motivator is often financial, creating a kind of synthetic natural law, mimicking natural feedback with external incentives and competition. In contrast, authentic resilience in community settings requires deeper alignment with implicit natural law. Here, success depends on ethical values that shape our relationships and daily lives. John David Garcia expanded these insights, developing scientific models and protocols that define ethical behavior. Garcia was an American author, inventor, entrepreneur, and moral philosopher, renowned for his pioneering work on creativity, ethics, and self-directed human evolution. He founded the Society for Evolutionary Ethics and wrote several influential books, including The Moral Society and Psychofraud and Ethical Therapy, both recognized for shaping ethical discourse around creativity and collaboration. At the heart of his philosophy is a simple but profound idea. Ethical behavior is any action that increases creativity without diminishing the creativity of others. To put this into practice, Garcia developed innovative models such as creative transformation, which emphasized collaborative problem-solving, He introduced the concepts of complementary pairs, men and women working together, and octets, structured groups designed to maximize creative potential. Garcia's methodical approach connects ancient wisdom, scientific rigor, and practical experience. He frames creativity as the ethical core of human progress, quantifies it, and demonstrates through history and scientific evidence that maximizing creativity, both individually and collectively, is how societies and individuals thrive. By logically defining and connecting intelligence, ethics, and creativity, Garcia empowers us to embrace change, seek truth, and collaborate to win the game of life. Yet, in much of the contemporary world, power has become intensely centralized, with decisions made by a few. These systems often violate the boundaries of natural law, suppressing feedback, honest communication, and collective creativity. History and recent events show how this centralization leads to fragility, alienation, and even systemic collapse, as the wisdom of the broader community is lost. This convergence of traditional wisdom and scientific validation gives us a vetted social framework, a practical tool that any community can use not only to withstand adversity, but to truly thrive even amid challenges like neocolonialism or unchecked centralization. Decentralized, feedback-rich, and ethically rooted social structures are now more essential than ever. As humanity strives for progress to solve global challenges, reach the stars, and explore the universe, we've learned that true advancement is impossible without restoring society to a state of harmony. For the first time in history, we have the opportunity to create sovereign communities grounded in natural law. Communities where we build our own economies, learning centers, care homes, and mutual aid networks. We can expand these communities into organizations that touch the world, all while remaining rooted in the boundaries of the biosphere and guided by implicate natural laws. We can exercise our deepest creative capacities, both as individuals and as part of a collective. Today, a paradigm shift is underway as more people seek lives authentic to the human experience, components empowering ourselves, and finding shelter from the chaos of societies governed by the rationale of the few. For the first time in a very, very long time, we are able to launch initiatives like City of Light 1320 or CDL 1320, a place that frees you from artificial constraints, allowing you to embrace your full human identity. A place that respects the boundaries of nature, where technology is employed in harmony with the world. A place that recognizes the divine order of creation, founded on intent and purpose rather than chaos. If this vision resonates in your heart, we welcome you to the City of Light. Reach out and join us as we rediscover our truest selves and embrace a new decentralized paradigm for society.